Hey, everybody. Welcome into the back room. I'm Andy Ostroy.
Let's clear this up right now, Secretary Kennedy. Will you tell America that all adults and all children over 6 months of age are eligible to get a COVID booster at their local pharmacy today?
Anybody can get the booster.
Anybody is eligible to get a booster by just walking into the pharmacy.
It's not recommended for healthy people.
No. If you don't recommend, then the consequence of that in many states is that you can't walk into a pharmacy and get one. It means insurance companies don't have to cover the $200 or so cost. As Senator Dr. Cassidy said, you are effectively denying people vaccines.
We're not going to recommend a product for which there's no clinical data for that indication. Is that what I should be doing?
What you should be doing is honoring your promise that you made when you were looking to get confirmed in this job.
You're going like this.
And that is, you promised that you would not take away vaccines from anyone who wanted them.
I never promised that I was going to recommend products with which there is no indication.
When you said...
And I know you've taken $855,000 from pharmaceutical companies, Senator.
Did you hold up a big sign saying that you were lying to the
Medicare will still pay for them, and Medicaid will still pay for them.
Tell the head of the CDC that if she refused to sign off on your changes to the childhood vaccine schedule, that she had to resign?
No, I told her that she had to resign because I asked her, are you a trustworthy person? And she said no. So if you had an employee who told you they weren't trustworthy, would you ask them to resign, Senator?
So I'm sorry, but this is not what she has said publicly. She has said...
I'm not surprised about that.
So you're saying she's lying?
Yes. A month ago, you were voting against her. Oh, because you thought she was either incompetent, ineligible, or unsuited to the task.
I voted against her because I was afraid she was going to bend the knee to you and Donald Trump. And it looks like she didn't bend the knee, so you fired her. Look, you're putting America's babies' health at risk, America's seniors' health at risk, all Americans' health at risk, and you should resign.
All right, well, that was Senator Elizabeth Warren at yesterday's Senate Finance Committee hearing with HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. We're going to get to that in a little bit. We also have the Democratic Governors Association, Ofirah Yheskel, with us today. We'll chat with her in just a little while. But first, thanks for tuning in. We appreciate you listening, and we'd love to hear your comments. So email us at backroommandy@gmail.com and/or post on our social media. And we'll read some feedback next time. And if you like the podcast, please rate and review and follow or subscribe, and you'll be notified every time we post a new episode. All right, so let's get to the big things of the week. Bobby Kennedy Jr. Wow. Did you guys see any of that shit show yesterday?
Yeah.
What do you think?
I like the coordinated effort on behalf of the Democrats. They came with a mission, and it was nice to see. It was equally helpful to hear at least 3 Republican senators be strong and push back. But what I really think is, does this really matter? It's like hopes and prayers when there's a gun shooting.
Yeah.
And so for me, I want to believe, but I have too much PTSD from the Kavanaugh hearings.
Yeah, well, we'll talk about that in a minute. Maddie, what'd you think?
I can only watch it really for about 5 minutes before I couldn't watch it anymore. But I agree with Jen that I don't know if it does anything. I think Trump is the final word on whether Kennedy stays or goes, and I don't think Trump wants to get rid of him because he's in love with his vision of Camelot and that he has a Kennedy working for him.
Well, that may be true. As I like to say to Donald Trump, there's only one thing that could be juicier than hiring and co-opting a Kennedy, and that's firing a Kennedy. But I think what senators did yesterday, including, and perhaps even especially Republican senators, was pretty brilliant, pretty masterful in pitting Bobby Kennedy Jr. against Donald Trump. And so they very quickly got into this thing where they were touting Operation Warp Speed, which Trump, like him or not, he deserves credit for that. It was pretty unprecedented to rush out an effective vaccine and bring it to market within a year of the COVID breakout. Trump said the vaccine saved millions of lives. Those are Trump's words. A few of the Republican senators said that he deserves a Nobel Peace Prize for this. And then they went to Kennedy. And like, do you agree he deserves a Nobel Peace Prize? Do you agree that the vaccine saved millions of lives? Do you think Donald Trump was telling the truth when he said the vaccine saved millions of lives? They forced him on the record on national TV to either support and give props to Trump for his signature achievement or not. And what he did was he waffled. He stammered. He equivocated. And they caught him in a lie and a contradiction. So, Secretary Kennedy, does Donald Trump deserve a Nobel Peace Prize? Yes, he does. Well, that's interesting because you are on record 1,000,000 times saying the vaccine didn't work. It actually killed more people than it saved. Why would you want to give him a Nobel Peace Prize for rushing out this vaccine? And Kennedy just like vomited up word salad. And this was something he could not spin, obfuscate, or lie his way out of. So to me, these senators, who are all cowards, not only have they pledged undying loyalty and fealty to Trump, but they're also terrified of him. And until Bobby is not Trump's little boy toy anymore, he's Trump's boy toy. So there's nothing they can do about him. So to your point, I don't know what yesterday in terms of a congressional hearing is going to do, but we all know that Donald Trump is obsessed with television. And there's a very strong likelihood that he sat all day and watched this. Let's see what my guy does in the Senate. And unless Donald Trump is willing to go, you know what, my signature achievement, fuck that, let Bobby piss all over it on national television. With Donald Trump, it's all about loyalty. And there's no way he could have watched that and felt that Bobby Kennedy Jr. was loyal to him. So let's take a break for a minute. This is a long clip. For those of you who didn't watch for 4 hours, here's 4 minutes of everything you need to know about what happened yesterday, who did what, who said what, and why this was an unmitigated disaster for Bobby Kennedy Jr.
Do you agree with me that the president deserves a Nobel Prize for Operation Warp Speed?
Absolutely, Senator. That was phenomenal.
Let me ask you, but you just told Senator Bennett that the COVID vaccine killed more people than COVID.
Wait,
That was a statement.
I did not say that.
Okay, then let me ask, because you also were
Senator, I just want to make clear, I did not say that.
We'll check. You also told Senator Wyden at the outset that you didn't want to take vaccines away from people. And as I conclude, I would like to say this. Because of the conflicting recommendations made about COVID, this is from Eric Erickson, good conservative out of Atlanta, Georgia, occasionally gives me hell. My wife has stage 4 lung cancer. She is one of the people the COVID vaccine actually helps. Thanks to the current mess at HHS, CVS is unable to get her vaccine. I would say effectively we're denying people vaccine.
Senator Cantwell.
You're wrong.
You canceled $500 million of research because the mRNA technology is about continuing the research to be ready for the next flu, influenza, the next pandemic, and you have to do the research.
I'm happy to have a detailed discussion with you about it. You're so wrong on your facts.
You're interrupting me, and sir, you're a charlatan. That's what you are. You're the ones who conflate chronic disease with the need for vaccines.
So over the last 50 years, vaccines are estimated to have saved 154 million lives worldwide. I support vaccines. I'm a doctor. Vaccines work. Secretary Kennedy, in your confirmation hearings, you promised to uphold the highest standards for vaccines. Since then, I've grown deeply concerned. The public has seen measles outbreaks, leadership of the National Institute of Health questioning the use of mRNA vaccines, the recently confirmed director of Centers for Disease Control and Prevention fired. Americans don't know who to rely on. I've been hearing from many of my medical colleagues, people I've known from medical school, residency, and when I practiced medicine in Wyoming, and there are real concerns that safe, proven vaccines like measles, like hepatitis B and others could be in jeopardy. And that would put Americans at risk and reverse decades of progress. As we've seen over the last 4 years, the previous administration 4 years, when recommendations became politicized or were swayed by bias, that the public trust can be lost. So what safeguards are in place to ensure decisions are based solely on science and not politics? And how are you going to make sure doctors and parents can count on CDC guidance?
Oh, Americans have lost faith in CDC, and we need to restore that faith. And we're going to do that by telling the truth and not through propaganda.
You tell the head of the CDC that if she refused to sign off on your changes to the childhood vaccine schedule, that she had to resign?
No, I told her that she had to resign because I asked her, are you a trustworthy person? And she said no. So if you had an employee who told you they weren't trustworthy, would you ask them to resign, Senator?
Just want to pick up on Senator Warren's point. Are you telling us that the former head of CDC went to you, you asked her, are you a trustworthy person? And she said, no, I am not a trustworthy person?
She didn't say, no, I'm not a trustworthy person. She said, no.
I can't conclude from the discussion today where you are on warp speed. So I would like the definitive statement on exactly where you are. Was it good? Was it bad? Were the things that worked? Were the things that didn't work? I can't discern that from what you said here. I, for one, think that it was a signature accomplishment of President Trump, and the mRNA platform is something.
I agree with that.
I look forward to you giving us a detailed statement on exactly where you are with warp speed.
What do you think?
He said the magic words, Donald Trump deserves the Nobel Peace Prize, right? So that was exactly what Donald Trump needed to hear. And he also was combative and determined and strong and, you know, really sold whatever his crazy thinking is in a strong way. And I think he was very effective at keeping his brand on brand.
Yeah, I think there are three reasons that right off the top of my head that Trump would not fire him. One, to Jen's point, he deserves a Nobel Peace Prize. I can see Trump's head. That's all he needed to hear. Two, we know that Stephen Miller finds Kennedy to be the best cabinet member, and Stephen Miller is incredibly powerful in Trump's circle. And three, and perhaps most important, Trump wins elections by getting all sorts of groups of people. And MAHA is a significantly important group of people. He fires Kennedy, he's throwing MAHA overboard, because you cannot find a better representative of MAHA than Kennedy. No one out there is even close.
So it's the boomerang. It's the anti-vax on both sides. It used to be just a progressive thing. Then it became a Republican, more of like a conservative thing during COVID. And Matt is 100% right. That is a strong coalition.
Yes,
No denial, but
it's where West Texas meets Marin County.
on some level, I agree. But we're talking about Donald Trump. He's erratic. You can do 99 things for him. If that one last thing,
I just don't know what he's done that isn't.
well, he basically pissed all over his signature achievement.
In Donald Trump's eyes?
Trump sent out a truth 2 days ago saying, was Operation Warp Speed a great thing? I'm not sure. And
But you know there are going to be people around Trump. And who has more say, whatever. We can leave that up to history and fate. But there are people around him who are going to say, sir, you ended the pandemic. You did that. And you do deserve a Nobel Peace Prize. And that Nobel Peace Prize is for your stewardship with Operation Warp Speed, which no one has ever done before. You created a vaccine which saved millions of lives. And what he just did was to negate all of that.
we'll see.
Because he can't say you deserve a prize and then piss all over the reason why you deserve a prize. That's equivocating. That's bullshit. He's playing you, sir. He's taking away your luster.
Who's left in his administration who's saying that?
And here's the
I'd love
other.
to know.
Maybe it's going to be Melania.
Okay.
Donald, the vaccine is very important, and Mr. Kennedy just pissed all over it. Look, we know that Donald Trump is all about optics and image, right? If you were casting a movie, would you cast Bobby Kennedy? I mean, first of all, and I'm not even, this isn't necessarily an indictment on his vocal condition.
Spasmodic dysphonia.
There's Jen, the old speech pathologist speaking. But listening to him is like listening to nails on a chalkboard while a screaming cat in heat is competing with a toddler who's been whining nonstop for 5 hours. That's what I hear when I hear Bobby. Then the way he looks, his body movements, his twitching, and his angry, mean face. And there was some weird ass breathing going on during that thing. So if you're Trump, who likes 9s and 10s, Bobby was like a 2. And I mean like -2. I just think we're due for a Trump firing. Do you remember how many people Trump fired in his first term? Right? So the heads have to roll. His approval in the latest, I think, Quinnipiac poll that came out last week, he's at 37%. The job numbers today are shit again. What is he going to do? Fire the BLS commissioner again? He's already fired. So these are the worst numbers since COVID. The last 3 months, the average job growth is 23,000. 23,000 jobs created each month on average in the last 3 months. 0.2 of a point increase in the unemployment rate during the same period. Inflation, we know, has been ticking up for the last several months. He's losing on the economy. He's underwater with all of his issues, crime, immigration, the economy. Prices are going up, not down. And so something has to happen soon because we know that Trump doesn't accept blame for anything. And so I have friends calling me, telling me they know people or they themselves can't go to CVS. They can't get vaccines. What do you think is going to happen when people start going in droves and finding out they can't get vaccines?
You seem so sure about that this is the line in the sand, and you got to put your money where your mouth is.
I think it's just easy.
I disagree.
Look, this week, 1,000 former and current HHS employees called for RFK to resign or be fired for gross incompetence. There was an op-ed, I believe in the New York Times, 9 former CDC director calling for his resignation or termination for the same reason. The recently fired CDC director penned an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal, also talking about his gross incompetence and that he needs to go. He's lost the faith of the people who work for him. Clearly yesterday, Republican senators, whatever faith they had in him, they've lost. He's just a problem child. He's a problem child. He's an easy chop. But we'll see. You guys could be right.
I think I'll concede one point. I could see them making a tiny, tiny policy shift to make it easier for people who want to get the vaccine to get it at the CVS, if that becomes an issue.
Like I said, Trump loves to humiliate people. And it would be so, you talk about on brand for Trump, Jen? Be more on brand for Trump to destroy Kennedy's life, destroy his legacy, turn his family against him, and then throw him out like Tuesday's fucking trash and laugh about it. Because I got a Kennedy and then I fucked a Kennedy. If you think that's not on brand with Trump, you crazy. All right, let's move on to Trump's other existential crisis, which is the Epstein scandal. So this week we saw a press conference outside the Capitol with survivors, the co-sponsors of this bill to essentially force a vote in the House to get the administration to release the full Epstein files. The co-sponsors were Democrat Congressman Ro Khanna and his counterpart Thomas Massie on the Republican side, and Marjorie Taylor Greene. Marjorie Taylor Greene. Okay, folks, I've been saying this for weeks and weeks now. This Epstein shitstorm, not only is it not going away, it ultimately has the potential to bring down the whole house of cards in Trump world. When you have Marjorie Taylor Greene at a podium with Ro Khanna, friend of the podcast, big progressive, something important is up. Who has her ear to the ground with MAGA more than Marjorie Taylor Greene? Marjorie Taylor Greene is on the right side of this scandal, and she's going to be on the right side of history. She's a shrewd politician. She knows what to say, when to say it, and who to say it to. And that is something nobody should be overlooking. Marjorie Taylor Greene, Ro Khanna, fighting for the same issue. That's because this issue has serious legs.
Agree. I mean, who would have seen that coming a couple months ago? I mean, this is a really, really big deal, which is why you're going to see all sorts of bad behavior from Trump in the next couple weeks.
Yeah, look, these women got up and told these horrifying stories of being raped as underage girls. And when Trump was asked about it about a half hour, an hour later, it's a hoax. It's a hoax. That's what the president of the United States says. Way not to listen to women. Way not to believe women. Way to pour lighter fluid on a 5-alarm fire. And he can't just Trump it away. Trump is so used to deflecting and distracting from whatever he wants. He is a master of that. Except when it comes to Epstein. It is not working here. Mm-hmm. Pretend you're in MAGA. Mr. Trump, help me understand something. After all these years, you told us that you're going to bring this shit down. You now control everything. The White House. You got Congress in your pocket. You control the courts. You got all the power. You tell us you're not implicated, so you're innocent. You have every reason in the world to deliver to us on this promise. Yet you're not doing it. Why? He cannot and will not ever be able to successfully answer that question. Because he can't. He can't because either he's implicated or too many people around him are. But at that press conference, one of the survivors said that they're compiling their own list.
That's awesome.
And they may be releasing that. But if they release it, they could be subject to lawsuits, threats, and they're right. So, what did Marjorie Taylor Greene say? I'll bring it to Congress, and I'll read the list on the floor of the House.
You know, you're right. Everything you're saying is true. And one thing that Trump and his administration cannot prevent is a change of heart from conservative Christian women who cannot and will not stomach, well, at least their version of the abuse of children, underage children, and anything to do with sex that's not their cult sex. So
and look,
seriously, it's a big deal.
In February, the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, stood before the TV cameras, pointed to her desk, and said, I have the files. I have the list. We're going to release it in phases. And then her staff did photo ops holding these giant white folders with titles on it, like the Epstein files, phase 1. Okay, now we're getting somewhere. After all the years of promises, boom, we got our people in the White House. We got our people in the Attorney General's office. We got our people in the FBI. We're going to get to the bottom of this disgusting, vile... Excuse me? We're not? We're not going to get to the bottom of this? She just said she has to... What's happening here? They can't escape that. That's not going away. They dug their own grave. They said they had it. How could it be a hoax if she said she had it? But this week should tell him that he's got a serious problem with this Epstein situation.
Yep.
I think he's anxious, and I think your point about Marjorie Taylor Greene is kind of interesting, the different people that are not on our side of things, and that's our only hope that Trump can't put the lid on this.
No. Look, these survivors stood there and said, we know who's on the list. So eventually, the names are going to get out one way or another, in one venue or another. And if Marjorie Taylor Greene does what she said she would do, and I believe her, when she's passionate about something, that woman does not give a flying fuck. And in that respect, I admire her and I give her props. If she walks in to that chamber, opens up a folder, and starts reading names, holy shit. There's going to be some shit going down in this country that we have never seen before. And one has to ask, what does Donald Trump enjoy more than anything in the world? Beating the shit out of his opponents, right? Mm-hmm. Taking down his enemies. Revenge. I am your retribution. So for years he said, I will prosecute these pedophiles, these baby blood drinking, child grooming, sex trafficking, rich, powerful, elite Democrats. I will bring them down. Wouldn't he love to actually bring them down? Wouldn't that make MAGA thrilled? Especially if he's not involved. What does he have to lose by doing that? It's a win-win, a complete win-win. Deliver on a promise, make your constituents thrilled and love you even more, and prosecute some really bad people. So why doesn't he? The answers to that question are not good. He's between a rock and a hard place. Mm-hmm. He can't really release these files in full, and he can't not release them.
It's sort of like the PP tape in a different version.
You always bring up that PP tape.
Because
I love
think
the idea of that PP tape.
I think that they're connected somehow. Sex.
I don't know, maybe.
Sex, Putin,
PP.
blackmail, PP.
Sex, Putin, PP. That sounds like a like a song. Sex and Putin and PP. So this is like a really fascinating saga to watch unfold. And my heart goes out to these survivors because they are so fucking brave. They are so determined. They have real courage. Unlike Congress, they have real courage to stand there and share their stories the way they have and demand accountability and demand justice for all. I mean, it was like 1,000 survivors of Epstein and Maxwell and their cohorts, whoever they may be. And it was clear at that presser that they are not going backwards. And if I were people on that list, and they know who they are, I think the future is not going to be pretty. All right, let's get to our winners and losers.
My winner, Andrew Cuomo, who may have just been given a lifeline in the New York City mayoral race with recent talks of Eric Adams regarding a Saudi ambassadorship. My loser, the U.S. economy. Employers added 22,000 jobs in August, well below the number forecasters had expected, indicating that the Trump economy is stalling.
I'm going to go with two quick winners. Jerry Nadler for knowing when to pass the baton to a new generation, and Alphabet, which just pulled off one of the greatest corporate escapes in antitrust history.
I have two losers, RFK Jr. being one of them for all the reasons we just discussed. My other loser is Trump. He's lost in court on several major cases, including his use of the Alien Enemies Act, the deportation of Guatemalan children, the Harvard funding freeze, tariffs, the firing of the FTC commissioner, and National Guard deployment in L.A. And after 2 months now, the Epstein shitstorm is louder and more troublesome to him than ever. All right, let's get to the weekly rant. So this week, Vladimir Putin, Kim Jong-un, and Xi Jinping got together in Beijing, presumably to discuss strengthening their alliance against the United States and the West. But one can only imagine the things they privately said about Donald Trump. Oh, sure, Trump loves to brag how he knows them, he gets along great with them, and that they're all his friends. And with his crippling insecurities and insatiable craving for attention and flattery, I think he actually believes all that bullshit, because they've all done such a masterful job playing him like a fiddle. Trump is a stooge for these brutal dictators, spewing their propaganda and talking points while making it easier for them to weaken American democracy and the relationship with our European allies. So let's be clear. Putin, Kim, Xi are not Trump's friends. They're not friends of the United States. They are our arch enemies who would destroy us in a nanosecond if they had the chance. And while Trump claims to be so tough on Russia, how many fucking 2-week deadlines have come and gone where he fails to follow through on his idle threats? Trump is the opposite of tough. He's a weak, feckless coward, and therefore the laughingstock of the world, especially of Kim, Xi, and Putin, the very strong men who he envisions himself being like. He campaigned on the ridiculous, self-aggrandizing promise of ending the Russia-Ukraine war on day one because he believed Putin liked him, that Putin would listen to him, that Putin was afraid of him. And recently, he even delusionally said Putin would agree to a ceasefire just to do something for me personally. But we're on day 228 now, and this deadly, unprovoked, and infuriating war rages on. And now Mr. Big Tough Strongman whines about Putin, says he's frustrated, disappointed, and angry at the much smarter, highly manipulative Russian dictator. And he talks about Putin as if he's just discovered that this brutal, murderous former KGB operative is an unreliable, untrustworthy, self-serving liar and master manipulator, which anyone with even half a brain has known for decades. So no, he is not going to negotiate a ceasefire, because Putin is the boss, and Trump is his puppet, his useful idiot. And it's why Trump continues to make these humiliatingly empty threats as Putin intensifies his attacks after each and every one of them. The only way this war ends is if Russia stops bombing Ukraine. When Putin stops, the war stops. Period. End of story. All right, let's get to Ofirah Yheskel. She is the External Affairs Director and Senior Spokesperson at the Democratic Governors Association. Prior to joining the DGA in 2023, she served as the Democratic National Committee's Deputy Communications Director. She has worked across presidential and statewide races, acting as a spokesperson for the 2020 DNC War Room, as Director of Media Relations for the successful 2020 Democratic National Convention, and as Deputy Communications Director for Beto O'Rourke's presidential campaign. Prior to that, she was a senior advisor to Virginia Governor Ralph Northam and the Wisconsin press secretary for Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign. Ofirah, welcome into the back room.
Thanks for having me.
So you are right in the thick of it right now. Everybody's talking about governors. So for those listeners not familiar with the Democratic Governors Association, tell us what the DGA is and its mission.
Well, we are the only committee that is dedicated to electing Democratic governors. So that is our bread and butter. We've gotten pretty good at it. And folks, I think right now are starting to understand just how important it is to have a good Democratic governor in their state. They're really a backstop against a lot of the chaos and dysfunction we're seeing come out of Washington. But yeah, we are focused on electing more Democratic governors because we like to say they get stuff done. And we have 2 off-year governor's races this year in Virginia and New Jersey, and then 36 next year for the midterm. So a lot of opportunities for us as a party, I think, to go on offense and put some wins on the board.
So let's talk about those races in Virginia and New Jersey. You have Abigail Spanberger in Virginia. You have Mikey Sherrill in New Jersey. These are the first big gubernatorial tests of this next election cycle. How critical are these 2 victories here?
We're really excited. I think, one, people should know that Virginia is our opportunity this year to flip a state from red to blue. But both are big opportunities for Democrats, I think, to send a big message about how we're feeling about the Trump administration and his second term. And I think we're seeing that he's not living up to a lot of the promises he made to the American people. He said prices were going to go down. Instead, they're going up. And both Abigail Spanberger and Mikey Sherrill are focused on how they can make a difference for the folks in their states. They both have plans for how they're going to lower costs. Both Abigail and Mikey have rolled out energy saving cost plans, housing plans. So I think they're really keyed in on a lot of these kitchen table issues that people have told us time and time again that they care about. So if you care about that, it's a real opportunity for us, I think, to send a big message, but also to make some history. Both Abigail and Mikey would be the first Democratic women governors in their states. And this in New Jersey, if we are successful and elect Mikey Sherrill, it'll be the first time, I think, in 60 years that we've elected a Democratic governor for 3 consecutive terms. It doesn't happen very often. So if folks are looking for a place to channel their energy, I can't recommend more. These 2 governor's races are a really great one.
And both states will test whether Democrats are succeeding in expanding their coalition beyond the traditional base. What specifically is the DGA doing to engage young voters, men, Hispanics, independents in these races?
Well, we believe in going everywhere. And I think both Mikey and Abigail are doing that. And again, really driving home how there's a really critical choice in both of these states for a governor who's going to wake up every day and think about how they can lower costs for you. I'm hearing that from everyone that you just listed off, young people who are thinking about wanting to buy a home. That's something I think that's on everybody's minds. Energy costs being so high, that's something that's on everybody's minds. But they're also doing the work and getting out in front of people. So we work really closely with them on making sure their message is getting everywhere. And it's going to places like this, Andy. So thank you for having me and making sure that people are hearing about how critical these 2 races are. But I think the other thing is really telling the story of how stark the choice is with the 2 Republicans they're running against, both very extreme people who are really just going to be rubber stamps for the Trump agenda if they're successful in New Jersey and Virginia. Winsome Sears has been dead silent on anything that Trump has done, including these DOGE layoffs, which have laid off countless people in Virginia. A lot of federal workers called Virginia home, and she's had nothing to say about that, or mocked people when they've brought it up as an issue. She said it's not a real issue, and she doesn't really see what the big deal is. And Jack Ciattarelli, who is the Republican nominee in New Jersey, says he has no daylight with Trump, doesn't disagree with him on a single thing. Can't find a single thing when we're talking about thousands of people losing their health care from this big, beautiful bill. Can't find a single thing when prices are going up. I think that's really disqualifying. And so I think the 2 of them have shown they're really extreme, really out of touch. And so I think that's the other part of this, is making sure people understand there's a really stark choice here in November.
Yeah, and that's this November. So what are the key governor's races coming up in 2026 where Democrats can potentially flip the office, and also where the party may be most vulnerable?
Well, I think people should know 36 governor's races. It's a really big map, but we're really excited by a lot of opportunities to go on offense and, like I said, put some points on the board. First, we have 11 incumbents who are eligible for re-election, and we've gotten pretty good at protecting them. We've protected 26 out of 27 incumbents since 2016. And people might also know that we've elected governors in a lot of these states where there were presidential battlegrounds that we maybe lost some ground in last year. 5 out of the 7 presidential battlegrounds we have a Democratic governor in. So want to make sure that we protect those states, like Michigan, for example, Pennsylvania, Arizona, got either incumbents who are term limited or who are seeking another term that we want to make sure continue that legacy of strong Democratic leadership. Then we've got some open seats in places like New Mexico, California, people might know is term limited with Gavin Newsom going out. And then we've got places we think we can go on offense. Nevada is a really exciting place. We think we could flip from red to blue. Joe Lombardo is the Republican governor there, but I think it's a really exciting chance to do a flip. And there are places like Iowa and Georgia that we're talking about. So a lot of exciting states with opportunities, I think, for people to channel their energy. But 36 is a big map, so we need all the support we can get to make sure we're doing that.
Mm-hmm. And my next question is really coming at you more as just an American, not a podcaster. And that is just my observation, and I know it's shared by a lot of other Democrats, is that we look at Republicans and we see Republican governors. It's almost like this, it's a team. And they do whatever they can to help the team. You know, hey, we'll send our National Guard to D.C. too. They seem like they're united. We don't seem to get that same sense from our governors. I always say, if we are truly on the verge of autocracy, if our democracy is truly on the precipice of ending, why don't the key Democratic governors out there, especially the ones who are planning to run for president, where's like a joint press conference to say, hey, we are all on this stage. We are united. We are not going to be bullied by Trump. We're not going to be bulldozed by his autocratic overreach. We are together. We're going to fight, blah, 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 blah. From an optics and image standpoint, forget energizing the base, which it would totally do. Forget sending a strong message to Trump that he's going to be attacked on all fronts. Wouldn't it just literally be the thing to do if we truly believe democracy is falling? You know, like desperate measures for desperate times?
Well, I think, Andy, all of our governors have been pretty united in speaking in one voice at these critical moments that you're talking about. When Trump sent the National Guard into LA against Governor Newsom's wishes, all of them joined together and, said this is unacceptable and in a gross overreach of power. And frankly, that the power of, or the command of the National Guard belongs with a governor, not the president of the United States. You do not see that from Republican governors. They are quiet, mute, do whatever they can to cede to whatever Trump's wishes are. That's why you see him, Governor Abbott, for example, in Texas, when Trump calls him and says, I think I'm going to lose the midterms, I need to find 5 seats in Texas. He says, yes, sir. Like, I'll work on this today. I think Democratic governors are united in pushing back wherever they can. And they do it in a number of ways, whether it is speaking in one voice against some of these overreaches, but also taking Trump to court and winning. A number of our governors have taken him to court over him holding back federal funds that are owed to them. Josh Shapiro's done it a lot. But I think it's important that we talk about that in places like this, because I think it doesn't get covered as much as some of the actions that Republicans are taking that are obviously, like you said, dangerous and concerning.
Well, let's look at Gavin Newsom for a second. He has been front and center in fighting Trump on social media with his epic trolling, his state legislature over redistricting, and in court over troop deployment. And he's winning. And again, in keeping with the theme of we're going to lose this democracy soon or else, it just doesn't feel like the other governors, not that they're not doing anything, but they're not fighting the same fight. They're not fighting fire with fire the way Newsom is. In fact, some of them seem kind of quiet. Gretchen Whitmer is kind of out there doing her own thing in terms of how she's dealing with Trump, which may be great for her state. I'm not so sure how it is for the country. And this is stuff I talk with fellow Democrats about a lot. It's what people are concerned about, is that not that we're operating business as usual, but we're operating more business as usual than we are, oh my God, democracy is dying. We got to fight fire with fire.
I mean, I know every state's different, and I do think Governor Newsom obviously is fighting this redistricting fight every way he can. But I know folks like Governor Hochul and Governor Moore are also trying to figure out what's possible. And I think that's something that all of them share, whether it's getting the spotlight it should or not. I think all of them are dedicated to figuring out how they can uphold people's rights. And that's, I think, why we have as many Democratic governors as we do right now. After Roe versus Wade fell, a number of our governors joined together and figured out what they could do on the state level to protect reproductive rights. I think we're seeing right now why it matters to elect Democratic governors on things like redistricting. A lot of them have broad powers in terms of making sure that we have fair and independent maps. But I think they've also been very clear, including our chair, Laura Kelly, who's a governor from Kansas, that we can't unilaterally disarm here just because Republicans are really going beyond the pale and kind of rewriting the script on redistricting, that we need to figure out what we can do and return that in kind as well. So I know it feels maybe like not enough, you're not hearing it loudly, but a lot of our Democratic governors, I think, have been unapologetic and very clear where they stand on this, that we should be protecting people's rights and upholding their voices, and that what Trump is doing is really dangerous, including on things like mail-in voting. Just the other day, I saw Josh Shapiro stand up and say, really unacceptable. He's going to stand up and protect the people of Pennsylvania, make sure that their voices are heard at the ballot box. And Katie Hobbs in Arizona, for example, was the Secretary of State in the 2020 election before she got elected governor, has also been clear. And a lot of people, not just Democrats in Arizona, Republicans vote by mail as well. And so I think, one, yes, a lot of our governors are speaking out, but we should be holding Republican governors to the fire too, because they're the ones who are sitting silent here or writing letters to Trump saying, yes, thank you, cut healthcare for people in my states, blow a hole in my budget, take away their rights, take away, redistrict them or gerrymander their voices out of office. So I think there's a 1-2 thing here. We also need to hold Republican governors accountable, and 80% of the country next year will have a chance to decide on who their governor is. And I think that's a real chance for us to send a message to not just President Trump in the midterms, but also on the state level, really, rejigger where we are as a country in terms of who has the power and is representing people and upholding their rights.
Mm-hmm. So I just want to stick with this just for another minute or so, because Democrats are not great at messaging. We're just not great at the bumper sticker. And what Gavin Newsom has done is he's broken through. He's figured out that way to message. And so if there are things that a lot of other Democratic governors are doing, and I know they are doing things, how do we get them to break through in the same way so that it's a multifaceted front all over the country that the folks at home are seeing? I think right now they're just seeing Gavin Newsom. And while that may be good for Gavin Newsom, I'm not so sure how good that is for the rest of us and for democracy. And especially when you're dealing with a bully, and we know bullies are cowards, it just feels like, why not, as visible as he is, doing what the kinds of things he is so that it can cut through? Because we're all on the same team here. I'm not challenging you because I'm trying to be confrontational. You and I are 1,000% aligned, and we have the same goals, up and down. That's why I say I speak as a Democrat, not as a podcaster. It's like I want to see that same fire in the belly and breaking through, because I too believe that we could be seeing a much different America in a year or two if this stuff isn't beaten back.
Well, I praise Governor Newsom. He really has seemed to have figured out a way to get into the ecosystem here, and seems to be on Fox News all the time because of what his strategy here. And so clearly it's working, but I think everybody has to be authentic to themselves. And that is kind of the challenge of our time right now, is this information landscape and how people are receiving information. And so that's why I'm here, Andy, is, I want to make sure that people who are listening to you are paying more attention to the states, because I think it really is easy to get wrapped up in what's happening in Washington, D.C., how dysfunctional it is, that nothing's maybe getting done, or maybe that you even feel super removed from what they're doing, or you think, that you voted in the election and nothing's really changed. What happens in your state really does matter, and I can't put a finer point on that who your governor is really does matter. And, it's deciding on whether your kid's going to have their school funded, whether we're going to, fix the damn roads, to borrow from Gretchen Whitmer, whether you're going to have your voting rights protected. A lot of these things are on the line, but then I think a lot of things that touch people in their day-to-day lives too, including jobs. Like today, the jobs report was not great. And I think that, again, just shows that Trump's not living up to his day one promise that people were going to have more jobs in this country, that prices were going to be lower, and that you were going to have more money in your pocket. Everything he said is he's gone back on that, cut people's health care to fund a tax break for billionaires. And meanwhile, I think Democratic governors, are fighting tooth and nail to make sure that every day something's happening that's a little better for you in your life. So I think all of us are trying to tell that story in every single place that we can. And I agree with you, this moment does demand that.
And so governors do have a lot of power. Can you help us understand the significant role that governors are playing right now, and state attorneys general, in fighting Trump? Because a lot of that is not the stuff we see. What powers do governors have? What powers do the attorneys general have that folks should know about to make them feel a bit better about what Trump is trying to do on a state level?
Well, one, I think everybody should know every governor has a veto pen. So a lot of these terrible things that we're seeing come out of state legislatures, a lot of our governors have the power to say, no, that's not happening. I'm not signing this bill. In some states, the makeup's a little different, but I think even having a Democratic governor in a state like Kentucky or Kansas sends a real message to people about what the contrast is in terms of your values and priorities. They also are able to protect your fundamental freedom. So I think, we're talking about reproductive rights, voting rights. A lot of them are figuring out ways that they can uphold that, I think, through the veto pen, through legislation. But then they also have broad judicial appointment powers and power on redistricting. So we actually have an initiative at the DGA called Power to Appoint that's dedicated to bringing attention to the fact that most governors in this country actually have broad judicial appointment powers. And so we're seeing right now that pipeline of judges who's appointed by Trump all the way down from the state level. A lot of them are actually coming from Republican gubernatorial appointments. And so not every state is like Wisconsin, where there's a Supreme Court race that takes up a lot of attention and money. Actually, a lot of governors in this country have the power to appoint fair, impartial judges. And so I think that's another reason we're seeing that it really does matter to have a Democratic governor in your state. But I think also they really are dedicated in a way that we're not seeing from Republicans to making people's lives better and pushing back on a lot of the bad things we're seeing come out of Washington. So, for example, when they were talking about cutting Medicaid and ripping food assistance away from people, I know all of our governors were very loud about how that was going to hurt people in their states. And again, Republican governors signed a letter to President Trump and said, do whatever you want to do, I'll deal with it. That is a budget hole that they're going to have, as well as Democratic governors. And I think that just goes to show that who's really fighting for you. But I would say also in terms of just like kitchen table issues, the money in your pocket, a lot of our Democratic governors are trying to figure out ways they can bring more jobs into the state and lower costs. And so a lot of them have been really successful at that. I'll shout out Kathy Hochul, who just did an inflation research check for people in New York. I know that's going to make a lot of difference for folks there who, working to get by as prices get a little higher. Also, she just did a social media or a phone ban in schools for kids. I think that's going to make sure that our kids can focus on their lessons instead of maybe social media and anything else that might be distracting them from the classroom. So I think there are a number of fronts that Democratic governors are really fighting on to make your life better. But I think if you care about the economy, kitchen table issues, and your fundamental freedoms, I think that 1-2 punch is really why it matters that we elect Democratic governors.
You mentioned mail-in voting before. Trump once again is trying to undermine election integrity in 26 and 28. He has threatened to ban mail-in voting. What are the guardrails? What are the powers that Democratic governors have? Can he ban on a state level mail-in voting? What are we supposed to feel about this whole process? Because it is scary to a lot of people when he makes threats like that.
Well, he's not allowed to do that, and it is scary. Every state controls its own elections, and I think, again, another reason it's important we have Democratic governors in as many states as possible who want to protect your rights and make sure that your ballot and your voice are counted at the ballot box. As we've seen, Republican governors seem pretty content to cede to Trump, whether it hurts people in their states or not. But a lot of our Democratic governors have either been secretaries of state, attorneys general who have a lot of experience suing, and even the DGA suing the Trump administration over the threats he's made to undermining people's votes, because it would fundamentally change the way we hold elections in this country. And we think that's dangerous. So even we are in active litigation against the Trump administration because we want to make sure that voters in our states are not scared to go even to the voting booth or afraid that their vote won't count. So we are actively trying to make sure that's protected, but so are our governors.
And so he can do it in red states, or he can do it with the cooperation of red state governors, but can't do it in Democratic states.
Yeah, every election is or should be managed by that state.
And I know you've been talking about what I call his big ugly ass bill, which is going to have devastating impact on so many Americans. How big a part of what the DGA is doing involves messaging on that?
I mean, we talked about it quite a bit. It will hurt people in the states that we're talking about. In Virginia and New Jersey both, I think something like 300,000 people are at risk of losing their health care just from the Medicaid cuts alone that he's talking about doing. ripping people off of food assistance. That's going to hurt families in this country. But also, I think a big part of what they talked about was cutting costs. And instead, we're seeing that what it meant was they ripped away healthcare are going to rip away healthcare from millions of people in this country so billionaires could have a permanent tax cut. That's a really unacceptable thing. And so we have no problem talking about that. But I think, again, this is just, I think, an exemplification of the fact that Trump's priority is not working for you, working for people in the states, not focused on lowering costs. Every day we're seeing that costs are going up, whether it's from things like this, from the tariffs, all the economic uncertainty that's happening. In Virginia, it's a really big issue that he laid off countless people through DOGE. A lot of people in Virginia work a federal job. But again, I think it just goes to show why having a Democratic governor is super important, because somebody like Winsome Sears is on TV last week saying, well, actually, nobody's going to lose their health care. That's not true. Well, no, that's not true. People in Virginia are at risk of losing their health care, hundreds of thousands of people who count on it. So I think, again, it's really critical for us. We're talking about it quite a bit because I think it is starting to break through that Republicans really did pass, like you said, this ugly ass bill that's going to hurt them in their day-to-day lives.
And what about immigration? We're seeing these awful ICE raids, very aggressive, often violent tactics that ICE is using, ripping people off the streets, racially profiling, which they're not allowed to do. We have issues with sanctuary cities and protecting sanctuary cities. How do Democratic governors safeguard that in particular?
Well, I think it'd be one thing if Trump was doing what he said, which was sending violent criminals home. But I think people really do find his approach here alarming. Going into churches and schools, that's not what he said he was going to do. And so I think Democratic governors are absolutely focused on making sure we're keeping people safe. But at the end of the day, I think this moment in time really just goes to show that they have full control of Washington, and Republicans could do comprehensive immigration reform right now if they wanted to. Instead, what they're choosing to do is pass this big bill that's ripping away healthcare for people to fund tax breaks for billionaires. I think, once again, it just goes to show where their priorities are.
And we've talked about this a bit today, but I want to close out with, there's a reality that I think we both agree that many voters just don't fully grasp the stakes of governor's races. So if you can just appeal to that once again, to just remind people how important right now the role of governors are and the attorneys generals on the state level that work with these governors.
Well, it's so important. And I would say right now we're seeing how important it is. If you want a leader who's going to stand up and fight for you, I think Democratic governors exemplify that every day. Whether on any issue you care about, I think a Democratic governor has the ability to fight for you on that. Whether it is on the economy and lowering costs, or whether it is standing up for your fundamental freedoms, Democratic governors, I think, have been really critical in standing up for you. So I would urge people who are watching and thinking about a way to channel their energy. Governors have a lot of power to impact you in your day-to-day life, and electing more Democratic governors, I think, is a really critical way for us to, one, send a message as a party about where we are, what our values are, but also, I think, to be a backstop against a lot of the chaos and dysfunction we're seeing from the Trump administration, because I think it really is clear that Republican governors simply are not going to use their voices to stand up for people in their states. And if that's what you're looking for, a Democratic governor, I think, is the ticket.
So folks out there, if you're in Virginia, New Jersey, please be sure to vote for Abigail Spanberger and Mikey Sherrill this November, and do what you can to convince friends and family to do so as well. Ofirah, thanks for coming on and helping us better understand the critical importance of these races and the overall role that governors play in protecting our democracy. And please come back and chat with us again.
Thanks for having me.
All righty. Take care.
This episode of The Back Room was edited and produced by me, Andy Ostroy. It was co-edited and co-produced by Maddie Rosenberg and co-produced by Jen Hammoud. Our theme song was composed by Andrew Hollander, and our logo was designed by Cricket Langell. And special thanks to Patricia Wind. Please take a moment to rate and review the podcast, and also follow or subscribe. Until next time, keep your eyes on Washington, Hollywood, and your own backyards, and have a great week.